Lesson today, from rebel to evolutionary, it actually has everything to do with faith. And you're going to find out how. But I have been talking about faith for actually the last 4 Sundays, so today will be the 5th Sunday. Faith is a big deal. We cannot spend too much time talking about the power of faith in our lives. So the first Sunday I talked about faith and how practicing acts of faith keep us from slipping into victimhood. It keeps us from being just a bystander in our own life. With acts of faith, we are a participant in our life. Then I talked about, the verse, faith, hope, and love, these three are bound together, but the greatest of these is love. I was curious, how's love greater than faith? Well, it turns out love, it's a cosmic force. It's not, we call it a feeling. Right, I love my kids, my grandkids that I don't have yet. Okay, and they're not even on the way that I know of. I'm not trying to put any pressure on anybody.
Yeah.
But love, the cosmic force, it's not about a feeling. That cosmic force of love is the force seeking to create through us. It seeks to create through all of its creations. That's what it does. It creates through its creations. We are all its creations. We create with it. We get ideas, we get inspired, and then we take action, and then we call that forth into our life. So you can say the cosmic force of love works through us, for us, and as us, because we are an emanation of that cosmic force of love. Then I talked about how playing it small in our life is a dream killer. It's a faith killer. We are not here to play it small. We are here to play it big. We dream big. We have big faith. We create a big life. We are actually here on this planet to expand our territory. We expand our territory by allowing that force of love to work through us, for us, as us, and call forth more good into our life than we've ever done before. So that's what we are here to do, right? Expanding our territory. Then last week, this was my favorite. I talked about the tricks of the little me. Now, in Unity, we call it the little me. Other, religions, might call it the adversary or Satan. Personal growth development circles will call it the ego. But our little me is a trickster. It's not actually the trickster, but it is a brilliant, diabolical little voice speaking to us and convincing us that this excuse it has makes perfect sense. Okay, we're not going to start the diet this Monday because that's just tomorrow. We don't have time to plan for it. Let's start it next Monday because then we can plan it out. We can write out a nice big list. Oh, wait, but then we have all those birthday parties. And then then we've got all the holidays. Let's start on January 1st. That's when everybody says, but wait, that's our fondue day. Let's go for January 2nd. It's the voice in your head. Every time you've procrastinated something and it made perfect sense. Every time you decided, no, I'm not capable of doing that, it makes perfect sense. That's the little me. And it's just using the same old tricks on you that it's always used and have always worked before. It wouldn't be using those tricks if they hadn't worked before. If you missed that one, go find it on Facebook because it's a really, really good one. All right, so here we are today. So I was thinking, how am I working faith in? Like I've talked about, everything, to me, that I think of when I think of faith. But then I'm looking around at our lives and people I know, friends, acquaintances, and there's the rise of the rebellion. There's the resistance. There's protesting. And I'm and then synchronicity would have it. All of a sudden I'm seeing Amazon wants me to watch all the Terminator movies, right? Or the Hunger Games movies, right? So these post-apocalyptic kind of stories. So that's when I got the idea of, okay, how do we move from being a rebel to an evolutionary? And so I'm not saying don't protest. I'm not saying don't join a resistance. Don't rebel against things. But what I'm going to do is invite you to examine those through the lens of Unity's 5 principles. Because when we live our life through the 5 principles, life just looks differently. And we have a better understanding of what's working through us, so we're more solution-oriented, where if we're not living through the 5 principles, we tend to be in problem mode, okay? So we think about the Unity principles. The first one is, of course, just God is all things. God is all things, so it's everywhere. It's all things. There's nothing on this planet that didn't come from source energy at some point or another. Then the second principle then, if God is all things, well, that also means us. Every single one of us in this room, every single person on the planet, even the people we don't like or don't agree with. Okay, but also that also means God's our ideas and the inspirations that we receive. Okay, the big dreams. You have a big dream for a reason. It was expressed through you from God, from that cosmic force of love. The third principle, we create our experiences through our way of thinking and acting. So how we go through our day, like how are we thinking? And then we take action on what we think, right? So if we're driving and we get cut off by somebody and we're thinking, oh, they're just in a really big hurry and we're fine. But if we think, that guy cut me off on purpose, they're trying to ruin my day, then we behave in a whole different way. Okay, the fourth principle is that we experience a deeper connection to source energy, to the God mind, when we align ourselves through prayer and meditation. And it's through prayer and meditation where we get the creative thinking going. We get the inspirations. We get the bright ideas. We call forth the good through all that. And then the fifth principle is talking about all this stuff's not enough. We got to live it. We got to live it. All right, so whether you see yourself as a rebel, which I always like to say, I'm such a rebel. I have a rebel heart, right? Because I love Madonna and that song. But whether we're like rebels or we're resisting or we're protesting, these things all have something in common, and that is that they're focused on what is wrong. They're focused on what is wrong, and we're not supposed to stay in those long term. We're not supposed to be rebelling long term. In fact, the longer we stay stuck in resistance, the more emotional exasperation we experience, because we're not living our life any differently. We're just mad about something not going our way or doing it the way we think it should be done. So we get stuck. In fact, if you want to look up the statistics on the war on drugs, the war on drugs, that's not getting any better. And that's been happening for decades. I mean, I was a kid when the war on drugs, I didn't know there was a drug issue. I mean, when I was from Hemet, and it's like, I didn't know that much about drugs. A little bit, but not a lot. Just like, don't worry, Mom. But the thing is that's, the war on drugs is not getting any better because they're focused on the war on drugs. Let's arrest all the drug dealers. Well, there's always more drug dealers to take their place because there's always people buying the drugs. There are people buying the drugs because they're in addiction mode. They are in struggling mode. They're in suffering mode. And so whether it's alcohol or drugs or shopping or gambling or porn or buying too many books all the time or food, that's a means to numb the pain and the trauma. And they don't know how to handle that. That's where the problem really is. If you meet an addict who has just got their 30-year chip, no drug dealer is going to be able to sell anything to that person, right? So it's not about arresting all the drug dealers. It's about promoting healing and well-being and people who really need that help. And that's what we're here to help each other, right? Okay, so all of us go through a rebellious stage. All of us do. I can remember my kids' rebellious stage. The first one happened around 2 or 3. And how it happened was, I love dressing my kids in all their cute little outfits. And then one day it was like, no, I want to dress myself. I want to wear this. And I was like, okay, what kind of crazy stuff is happening in my house, right? How's my life spinning out of my control that my kids want to dress themselves? So this is the first stage of rebellion. Right? A child. I remember Adam's like, I'm going to cut my own pancakes, Mom. And I'm handing him the butter knife. I'm just like, but it's all crooked. Let me cut it for you. Okay, so that's the first stage of rebellion. It happens with teenagers. Now, teenagers, they don't know exactly what they want, but what they do know is they don't want their parents controlling them. And so teenagers, it's like, my parents are stupid. They don't know nothing. They don't know nothing. So that's rebellion. That's rebellion. So I was thinking about, okay, what's the difference between rebellion and being an evolutionary? Well, I realize there's a step in between there. We go from rebel to revolutionary to evolutionary. So it's like, what's the difference between rebellion and revolution? So I looked it up. There is an actual definition difference. Rebellion is a resistance to something, whatever that is. Like on the big scheme of things, what we're hearing about all the time on social media is resistance to, you fill in the blank, you know what that is in your life. But a lot of us have resistance to things, small things that are in our life. Like the people on the outside of our life, they think like we look so normal and we have it together, but inside of our life, we're like, oh, this thing's controlling me and I hate it, So we even have things within our life that we have resistance to. But remember, like what spiritual groups like to say, what you resist persists. So we cannot stay in resistance. We will drive ourselves crazy. When we stay in resistance, we end up sounding like that little toddler. Like, no, I want to do it my way. No. Or we sound like the teenager. That's stupid. And if you believe that, you're stupid too. Okay? That's what I'm hearing grown adults like say this stuff, right? And so, anyway, but rebellion, it's a normal progression. It's normal to see, I don't like this. I don't want this in my life. But see, that doesn't take any faith. That takes zero faith to look at what we don't like, right? It takes no faith. So then we move into revolution. Revolution is when we overthrow something and replace it with something that works. So if we're going to have a revolution, we have to know what it is we want in our life. That we want to get rid of this one thing and then replace it with this thing. And so as a rebel, we don't know what we want yet. We just know what we don't like. But we just can't stay stuck there, or we'll end up, being a blamer and a victim in our own life again. So we move into revolutionaryism, and this is where we really have to embody faith, because now we're paying attention to what it is we do want to create. Okay, no, I don't like this. So what is it that I want to replace it with? Now, as a revolutionary, we are discovering what it is that motivates us. Oh, what's motivating me is because I want to get this thing. So having this is the motivation behind everything I do. We will also look at what we feel called to contribute. Okay, so what do I want to give to have this thing in my life? Okay, we also have, and here's the hard part, and here's really where we need the faith. What do I have to sacrifice in order to get this thing I want? What behavior do I have to give up? Or like what, way of living in my life do I have to give up so that I can do something differently? Everything we have in our life right now, what we're doing right now, gets us what we're having right now. So if we want something different, we have to do things differently. Okay? And then we are all set, like to overcome whatever it is. Okay, we've decided what it is we want. We know it motivates us. We know what we want to contribute. We know what we need to sacrifice to have this new thing in our life. Now what's left is we're either changing a thing or we're rising above it. Okay, so that's the part of being a revolutionary. So then we move from revolutionary to evolutionary. And I think of somebody like Martin Luther King Jr. as being an evolutionary. Like people will talk about how he led marches and protests and stuff like that, but he knew how to bring out the best in others. He brought out the best in others. He didn't just get everybody all pissed off and they stormed the whatever. He brought out the best in other people, and that's because he had a dream. He knew exactly what he wanted, and he knew what he had to do to get it. He knew what he was called to contribute. He must have known what he had to sacrifice, right? And that was probably just sitting in the comfort zone, right, and accepting the inequality. But he moved forward. But see, that's the big thing right there, is he brought out the best in other people. When we're in resistance mode, we don't tend to bring out the best in others. In fact, we might just be riling people up. And that doesn't do a whole lot. So as an evolutionary, what we're really doing at that point, because as an evolutionary, we are living in faith constantly. And so we are expressing our authentic self. Like everybody's a radiant soul. Everybody is a radiant soul. But we don't really get to express that and live that until we are an evolutionary in our own lives. Then people see it. Like you saw it in Martin Luther King Jr. He was a radiant soul. Now, when we become a radiant soul, when we express our radiant self, when we are an evolutionary, we stop worrying about what other people think so much about us, right? We're just thinking about, our purpose. We don't support this club or that club. We support each other, right? We support our friends. We support our family. We don't let different things come in between us. We don't let differences of opinions come in between us. As an evolutionary, here our field of vision expands. And this is where we really are walking every day in the truth. God is all things, and that means me. It's not something weird we're trying to force to work in our lives. We've already said it to ourselves so many times that it is second nature. Okay, God is all things, and that means me. So we don't get distracted by what other people are doing or saying, or whether they agree with us or they don't agree with us, because we are captivated by our purpose. We are captivated with the idea of being a rising tide, for all people, calling forth good for all people. We are captivated with this idea that we are here to expand our territory, however that looks, just like dreaming that next dream that we have and calling forth more good into our lives. We are captivated by our relationship to creation. Okay, when you really think about this, I am created in the image and likeness of my Creator. As our Creator creates in the whole, let there be light. Boom. There's light. There's no hesitancy. It's just there. There's the declaration. Let there be light, and it is so. That's how we create in our little lives here. We have our declaration. Let there be light. We all have our own let there be light moments, right? That's our declaration. We also can be really captivated by the power of choice in our lives. Choice is a superpower. We get to choose every day how we're responding to things or how we're interacting or reacting, in our lives. We get to choose how we show up every day. We get to choose to spread more mercy, to have compassion, to have kindness and tenderness. We get to choose to just keep spreading that stuff everywhere. That's on us. We get to choose that. So a rebel or somebody in the resistance, they're still focused on what's wrong. And again, that to be right there doesn't take any faith, but it's a starting point to get clarity. It's good to know what we don't want, because then we know, obviously I need to replace that thing I don't want with something that I do want. But there are a lot of people right now that are focused on what's wrong. And sometimes that can weigh really heavy. And I won't say they're focused on what's wrong. They're focused on what they're perceiving is wrong and what they would like to see changed. But they're staying in that heaviness of there's all this wrongness. That can be kind of overwhelming sometimes. Even if you're real clear on what you want to create in your own life, sometimes that is a heavy thing to be around. Okay, so we have to be able to embody faith to expand our territory, to call forth that good, whatever that good is that we want to create in our life. We also have to have a desire to expand our territory. Sometimes expanding our territory, calling forth the good, creating a new experience, that can be really scary. When that big dream, for me, I remember when my son was born, I was like, I'm going to homeschool my kids. And this was back in the day when I didn't know any homeschoolers, but my midwife talked about it. So I was like, okay, I want to do that. That sounds amazing. I'm going to do that. And for the first 4.5 years he was on this planet with me, it was real easy because I was only talking about it. I wasn't doing anything yet. But see, I'm an introvert. I'm actually an introvert. And then one day, I was like, okay, I got to figure out this homeschooling thing now. I got to find a group of people, and they're all new people that I don't know. And I'm scared of meeting new people. I get a stomach ache, and it feels weird and strange and uncomfortable. So that was the thing. It felt uncomfortable. Now, sometimes when we feel uncomfortable, we think, oh, it's uncomfortable. It means I shouldn't do it. And sometimes this is true. So if you walk into a room and you're like, whoa, this is just wrong, walk out. But see, this is how it will go for us. We have some kind of a new experience we want to create, and we're going to feel really, really excited by it. We're going to be so excited. And then it comes time to do it. Then we feel a little scared. It's like, well, I want to do it, but I don't want to do it. It's going to be hard. Well, I want to do it, but wait, I'm going to have to meet people and share my name and I show up at these groups. Okay, and so it feels uncomfortable, yet we still want it. And if we think about actually not doing the thing, it makes us sad. I was like, well, okay, I would be really sad if I didn't do that. You know that feeling of regret? right? You look back and you're like, man, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have done that. Okay, so that's how we know it's a big dream. Okay, so whatever that is for you, whatever it is that feels exciting, but then it feels kind of scary and uncomfortable, but also it would be really sad if you didn't get to do it. That's it. I mean, it could just be, like I remember starting a book club at my house. My first book club I ever did was in 2012. And I invited, it was funny, I invited people I actually knew. Like I wasn't inviting any strange people. Or, like that I didn't know.
Yeah.
But I was only inviting people I knew. But you know what popped into my head? Because I'd never had a book club at my house before, and it was uncomfortable. They're going to be saying, Deanna, like, who's Deanna to have a book club?
Oh.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, they're going to be like, oh, Deanna shouldn't be having a book club. She's not a book club person. That's what I thought. And I picked out a really good book, the Wishes Fulfilled book by Wayne Dyer. And I'm like, they're going to think I'm silly for picking this book. And actually, it went really, really well. But what I'm just trying to get the point across is that sometimes it's going to feel weird and uncomfortable. And your little me, that's the voice that's going to just give you the really good excuses for not doing it. Okay, for not doing that. Okay, so as we're moving into revolutionary and evolutionary, here's where we stop focusing on our problems. This is where we stop focusing on our problems. There's always going to be problems. And so, like, I like to tell my little me, it's like, okay, this is a new thing for me, and I'm working on this right now. We'll have a problem later for you, I promise. And you know what? This is why I think the mantra, just for today, works so well. Because it's only, sometimes your just for today is just for the next 15 minutes. Right? And your little me will be like, yeah, I can wait 15 minutes, that's fine. She'll cave in like she always does. But then we do another 15 minutes. Okay, so you just tell it it needs to get in the back seat, put its seatbelt on. It's part of the human experience. We're not going to eradicate it. Just let it know you're driving the bus. It's not driving the bus. Okay, so we're focusing on what we want to create in our life. To move from revolutionary to evolutionary, it's just like this easy thing, or simple. It's a simple thing. And all we just do that in love. Everything we're already doing, we just do all of that in love. And that, when we do everything we do in love, it's easier to remember to see the light in each other. It's easier to remember. It's like, oh, God is all things, and that means me. God is all things, and even that guy over there who's in a different political party, he eats differently than me. He prays differently than me. He votes differently from me. He parents differently from me. But we're all still like, but I see the light. I see the light in that guy. And then doing all that we do in love, it's easier to use our choices as our superpower. It's easier to recognize, did I just make this choice because I am afraid of looking silly and so I'm kind of backing out? Or did I make this choice because I want to call forth more joy into my life? And yeah, it's going to be really weird and uncomfortable, but I can't imagine not doing it. So I'm just going to just jump on in. Like, we pay attention to how we're choosing things. And it's this that makes us a force for good, right? This is the thing that allows us to have an impact in our world, like an impact in our life. I used to think that, well, I can't even have an impact. Impact is a big thing. That's what I thought. I'll never have an impact because I'm not curing cancer. I'm not coming up with a plan for world peace. But you know what? Having an impact, it just means that we helped one person have a better day than what they were having. That's how we have an impact in this life. Okay, so we go from rebel to revolutionary to evolutionary. We are designed to do this right now. Like right now, in this point in time, today, like this is what we're designed to do. We're designed to just make this forward motion. You remember the Age of Aquarius song? Right? When the moon is in the seventh house. The Age of Aquarius, like whether you follow astrology or not, you can use it as a metaphor if you want to, but the Age of Aquarius means like a time of humanitarianism and a time of great vision and faith, like really embodying faith, having faith in ourselves, in each other, in source, however you want to see that in your lives. It's a time of unity. And not just unity of the church, but like unity among all people. In the African philosophy of Ubuntu, one of the things they say is, in Ubuntu, it's basically translated as, I am because we are. Right? We become because of the people we are becoming with. And so one of the things I heard from that philosophy is, how can one of us be happy if the others are sad? And that is like a defining moment here in the age of Aquarius, a defining moment in this time we're living in right now. Ram Dass said, we're all just walking each other home. That's what we're doing. You know what? No matter what it is we're doing in our life, all of us are going from point A to point B. And like, we all have the same destination at the end of all this, right? And so we are helping each other along the way, right? As we help each other, there are more people to help each other, right? More of us, because we become a rising tide. We become a rising tide. Rising tide lifts all the boats, right? So even if you have a little tiny boat and you don't have any oars, like the rising tide, it will lift you up also, no matter your boat. Okay, so here are our call to action for this week. Okay, just for this week. Look in your life and see, or just ask yourself, am I in resistance right here? Am I spending too much time focusing on something I don't like? Am I sitting here thinking, well, I know better than everybody else over there. Why don't they just do what I think we should do? Okay, is that where we are? Like, look at this over this week. Because to move from rebel to revolutionary to evolutionary, it's just about one act of faith. That's it. Just one act of faith that we just keep doing over and over again, right? Over and over again. I had a friend of mine who, years ago, she got involved in hanging out with homeless people. She just decided she was going to do that. And it made her feel kind of uncomfortable. But one day, she just went and sat with somebody on a bench and started talking to him. And like, she ended up giving the guy her socks. Like, because this was up in the mountains, right? And it was cold. So she took her socks off and gave her socks to this guy. And she said she went home and she felt like it was the best moment of her life. She felt so good about it. But it was hard and scary for her to do that. And so, like, I know some people who are really, really involved in helping the homeless. But see, I know, and myself included here, I feel kind of weird. Like, because I will look at a homeless person and I'll think, oh, they're but for the grace of God, right? That's where the discomfort comes from. It's like, oh my gosh, that could be me. That could be somebody I know, right? And it is people we know, actually. Okay, my daughter taught me this trick for the introvert to kind of open the door. Sup. So I saw, I saw this homeless guy one time, this was a little while back, but I was like, oh, I'm going to do like my friend does and make eye contact and smile. That was my goal. I didn't even have any change or anything to share, but I just thought, just going to recognize they're another human on this planet, right? And so I said, I was just so nervous, I'm like, sup? And he goes, how's your day? And opened the door. And I was like, my day's good, how about you? And his day was great. That's what he said, my day's great. It was great. Okay, so it's an act of faith. It takes an act of faith to do something that feels that weird and uncomfortable. Now, for me, that was very weird and uncomfortable. But then I felt better about it. Okay? So consider this. Giving what's easy, giving what you're already really good at, giving what's really comfortable, that's not an act of faith. An act of faith is giving just enough to be a little uncomfortable. Just a little uncomfortable. Okay? I instigated a conversation with somebody. Right? But I didn't take him home. I didn't give him a room to live in. We don't have an extra room. Right? But that was any level, anything that you want to do, you're already doing it really good in your comfort zone. You just go out of your comfort zone a little. That's it. And then look at, pretty soon, your comfort zone goes from here to here. And what are we doing? We're expanding our territory. That's what we're doing. We're expanding our territory. Any act of faith that we do in our lives is going to lead to the expansion of our territory. Even if it's not directly connected to our big dream, okay? Saying hi to somebody you don't know, starting a book club, that may not be connected to your dream at all, but it's an act of faith which leads to the expansion of your territory. So here is our affirmation. Let's say it together. Every act of faith expands my territory. I'll do one more time because I think I'm in some of your all's way. Every act of faith expands my territory. And that is really how it goes. Every little act of faith, one after another, that's all you need. You give a little bit here, you give a little bit there. You keep your focus on what you want to create in your life. Don't get distracted by the crazy stuff happening out there, right? Just keep your focus on the good, on how's that go? Keep your focus on what's lovely, on what's pure, on what's kind and wonderful. I'll just kind of ad-lib that. But that's where we're expanding our territories, right there. All these acts of faith build on one another. And so you're just creating a big faith bank account when you're doing that. Every little act of faith is calling good forth through us, for us, and for other people. Every act of faith helps us to be that rising tide. And that's how we're creating heaven on earth. Through one little act of faith after another. All right, so until next time, remember, you are divinely designed to do all of this stuff that we talk about. And now's the perfect time for it, because this is where we are, right here and right now. You are the activity of spirit in this world, and you are blessed in all that you do. And so it is.
So it
So it
is.
is. All right.